Hi, everyone. I'm Fred Fisher. I'm a professional liability insurance specialist. So that's the fastest way to clear the room or decide you have to take a break. But nonetheless, you want to stick around and listen because what you need, you're going to hear some stuff today you have never realized and didn't expect to hear. Um, but let me grab your attention with this one. I pride myself in having a reputation in this industry as being a coverage terrorist.
Ooh, I like
And
that.
I relish that reputation. And more and more because try to talk to an underwriter anywhere when they're all being replaced by artificial intelligence, preset policies and policy language that you're not going to be able to talk to anyone that needs to be endorsed or fixed or rewritten because they're filled with what I call gotchas that'll get you. And that's a trademark of mine. I understand provisional approval has been given by the U.S. Patent Office. So, is that, Brad? How's that for an opening?
I love it. Let's kick this off.
Let's go. I'm ready. You know, the clock is running and we're going to head towards that goal line. And I do not quit until the goal has been achieved.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zales, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people just like you and me from all over who are doing amazing things to Awakened Nation. I love it.
Or as they once said, America loves winners.
America.
Hates
Yes.
losers.
They do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Fred Fisher, and he's on my show today. And I have to thank Denise Griffiths for introducing us and putting us together because she is my favorite podcaster. We've been friends for at least 15 years, and she does one heck of an interview. And she says, "Hey, you gotta get this guy on your show." I was like, "Okay." And then Devin Blaine reached out and was also like, "You got to get this guy on the show." So I wasn't going to wait for the third introduction, my friend.
I'll tell you right now, Denise obviously is a glutton for punishment because she's already wants me to come back soon. God help her. God help her.
Yeah,
We're
she's
gonna have some
great.
fun today. Like I said, fastest way to clear a room is here. We're here to talk about insurance. Well,
Um,
you're gonna want to
I,
stick around today.
Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, get excited. I know that's hard to do. It's We're going to be talking about insurance today. Claims made insurance. This is the title of the book that Fred wrote. Claims made insurance, the policy that changed the industry. And he's going to go into why you didn't get that claim fulfilled. But let's start off with this. Woody Allen said that the one of the levels of hell was to be stuck in an elevator with an insurance salesman. And I don't know if any remembers that. I think that was in Sleeper, one of his movies. He actually did that.
Obviously, he was talking about somebody involved in life insurance, but even that's
Yes.
gotten sketchy as well. But we can deal with that. I know we all love to hate insurance agents and insurance brokers, and all they
Yeah.
do is get money, and you're paying money for nothing. And well, we could debate how true that was from the 1950s, say through around 2010.
Yeah.
But now it's becoming true.
Yeah.
There,
It's
there are,
crazy.
I mean, it's becoming more true than ever. And part of it has to do with this fanatic belief in the sanctity of the written contract, which is constitutionally protected, by the way. And that's one of the reasons for it. But the bottom line is insurance companies, in many instances, have forgotten what they're in business to do. And that is to place the insured back in the position they were in before a loss, a covered
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
And granted, there are always gray areas, and that becomes problematic and ends up, going to the courts to determine whether it's something that's covered or not. But we're not even talking gray area issues anymore. There are law firms out there that have actually written articles about hiring knowledgeable coverage attorneys to help write policy language so as to be able to avoid paying claims that an insurance company would normally pay.
Right.
So we're going to get into that today, but here's what you really need to know and why this is so important. You can't even trust your insurance producer.
What?
That's right, you can't. And I'll tell you why. 37 states now adhere to what's called the order taker standard of care for an insurance producer, which means they have no obligation to advise you. They don't have to help you. All they're there to do is to take your order and get what you've asked for. In other words, they have no more obligation to assist you than your server at your local restaurant.
Wow.
Believe it or not, that crazy communist-filled state of California was the one that kicked that off.
Oh, of course.
And you know, a very conservative state like Florida holds insurance producers to a standard of care equal to that of a fiduciary, a very high standard of care, where they do have an obligation to assist you and what have you. So go figure that. But it's not how it started, it's how it evolved that became the problem.
Yeah.
And so now, unless an insurance producer holds themselves out as an expert, misrepresents coverage, I like that one,
Yeah.
or does a risk management review, preferably for a fee from you that you pay to do a risk management review, which is a fee in addition to whatever commission he gets from selling a policy. Unless they do those three things, they have no duty to advise you. Now, in some states, they have since looked at the length of the relationship. So if it's been the same agent for 10 years, then they may have a higher standard of care. But how many of you go to captive agents like State Farm, where they can only write business with State Farm?
Huh.
They may not be able to get you what you need. Do they have an obligation to tell you that? Yes, they do. Farmers agents in most states are also captive, but they have to give farmers first right of refusal. Huh. And if they're properly licensed and farmers doesn't want the account, or maybe you want limits that farmers can't provide, then that farmers person, if they're properly licensed, can then act as a broker and go to other markets. And then you have your independent agents that can then that can deal with many insurance companies. But here's one of the things you have to understand. Whether or not they're in an order taker state or not, you can always put things in writing to them. Number one, tell them you want to sit down with them and have them go over your coverage. And believe me, you have no idea how important that is. We're all programmed. We're all brainwashed into buy price, 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 price.
Right.
You see it every day. I saved $400 on my auto insurance. Oh, boy. And then you have that placebo effect. Here's your policy, Brad. You just saved $400, you know, placing your coverage with me. Don't you feel good?
Yeah.
What you don't know is what you didn't give. What did you give up?
Yeah.
Because state laws are written in such a way that maybe policies have to have certain minimum coverages. After that, they can do whatever they want to do as long as the state approves it. Well, most states, they're file and write. They don't have, you know, most insurance companies have to file their rates, their policy forms. They have to follow the rule, file their rules and their endorsements and get pre-approval. Well, most states don't have the staff to deal with it. And so once they filed it, they're off and running to the races. And as long as they do what they filed, then with the state, they're okay. Wow. But here's the thing about insurance producers. Like I said, they have no duty to advise you. So is that any different than you going to your doctor today, Brad? And says, well, Brad, what's wrong with you today? And how would you like me to treat you?
Yeah. A little backwards. Yeah.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah.
You know, these are people that have to take continuing education courses. They had to take a pre-licensing course before they were even taking the exam. In 5 years of selling even something as simple as you think homeowners or auto insurance can be, they know more about the ins and outs of those coverage than you will ever know. And yet you are held as a consumer to a higher standard than the agent or broker is. How crazy is that? That's states, insane. However, that don't follow what's called the order taker standard are Arizona, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and West Virginia. And in New Jersey, by the way, they did it by statute. They actually hold insurance producers to a fiduciary standard of care. Much like your lawyer, he has a fiduciary standard. So let's tell you why this is important. So you bought good homeowner insurance, you think. Full replacement cost coverage. Oh, really? What's the limit? Is it adequate? Do they have a built-in cushion like some insurance companies where there's a 30% increase automatically for that? Fine. So you think you're properly covered? Well, let me tell you why you may not be. Number one, there's all these other items of coverage, whether it's the additional living expense in the case your house is total loss. Are you
Right.
going to afford your rent or your mortgage as or your rent on your apartment while you're still living at another place, for up to a year or more? That's called additional living expense. On what basis is that written? Is it a set limit like 25,000? Is there a time limit, 6 months or a year?
Right.
Or is it actual loss sustained, which is unlimited coverage for an unlimited amount of time, so long as it's reasonable? How about that?
Wow.
How about your guaranteed replacement cost? Let's come back to it again. Depends on what estimator the insurance company uses. They may say, "Oh no, your house is not worth that much to replace because our estimator says it's worth, it's going to cost $350 a square foot." Whereas in reality, due to another 18,000 homes that just, were destroyed in the LA fires, you're going to find that $350 a square foot to replace ordinary construction, let alone high end, is nowhere near enough because of the demand on building supplies. It's going to be more like $400 or $500 a square foot to do. So is that cushion enough? That's
Yeah.
number one. Number two, how about building code and ordinance coverage? How much of the cost to rebuild your home is going to include improvements? Because improvements to the property are normally not covered. It's like suddenly going from a plastic uh, countertops to fine marble. That's an improvement the insurance company doesn't have to pay for. But they do have to pay for code and ordinance upgrades. My house is 70 years old. So what do you think the building codes are today in relation to what they were 70 years ago? And how
Wow.
much of that difference is going to be the cost of rebuilding the house? So I found out that at that time, I think my home was insured for, just hypothetically saying, $500,000, 500.
Right.
I found out that the building code and ordinance was limited to 10% of the fire limit. So I had $50,000 in coverage for code and ordinance. So I asked the
Wow.
underwriter, how high can I take it? She said 90%. I said, do it.
Wow.
But I have no idea what code and ordinance expense will be in the event my house is a total loss. God forbid that
Wow.
should happen. So these are things that we take for granted. Oh, I've got my full replacement cost. I'm fine. No. And then you
Yeah.
have your personal property, which is often, again, a percentage of your fire loss limit. So if you have a $500,000 limit, you may be shocked to find out that you've only got, $100,000 in personal property, which initially sounds like an awful lot. Maybe it's too much. But when you look at the cost of clothing, you look at the cost of all the appliances, when you look at the cost of your record collection or your CD collection, all of a sudden,
Are your furniture?
yeah, you might be surprised.
Yeah.
Don't take any of this for granted. Your insurance agent doesn't have to help you with this. You have to force him to tell you, what do I need to know about all these sublimate things? How about sewer backup coverage limited to $5,000?
Wow.
Hmm? Now here, when they lost 800 homes in the Woolsey fire in Malibu.
Right.
After that, the building codes got so strict that one of the things that were required in Malibu right now is probably a $10,000 to $15,000 expense to have an engineer come out and do a soils compact test to see whether or not the soil is compact enough to handle the weight of a new foundation. I'm serious. That's a new building code that went into effect because they're upgrading the fire, retardant type of construction so
Yeah.
that 800 homes won't burn up again in the next fire in Malibu. So these are all things your agent doesn't have to help you with unless you ask. Put it in writing.
And most people don't know to ask any of this, Fred,
That's right.
because they're not insurance professionals. But
That's right.
I like what you said earlier. You said it is their duty, fiduciary duty, to bring you back up to where you were before this catastrophic event.
But
Uh,
only in certain states follow that. That's the
yeah.
problem. It's
And
not in California.
well, California has set the tone for a lot of things that have brought industries down. You may not know this, but they set the tone for all freight and diesel engines that carry all our goods and services across the country. Their standards are so high that some trucking companies have had gone out of business. They can't keep up with the changes.
We also can't live
California,
with the pollution either, Brad, because there's too many of them. We're such a
right?
heavily populated state.
It is. And Iowa, my big complaint is, where is the money going in these, not just in the insurance industry, but when you pay your taxes and you pay for things, where does the money go? You know,
There are
and
actually California is pretty good on audits of that kind, especially with government. But um, I'm not here to just have a political conversation so much as I am to help the consumer know what you have to do. Now,
exactly.
so put it in writing with your insurance agent what your expectations are. Please, for Christ's sake, take the time to do it, because otherwise you are really gonna have a serious problem. Uh, Another problem facing the insurance industry right now are banks and lenders. They're getting pretty difficult right now, and I can't, I suppose, fault them. They don't want to. They're going to be, if you have a mortgage, they're going to be a co-payee on the loss, and they may not want to release those funds to you until they're satisfied that your land has been cleared of any environmental problems, and that's a
Oh,
big deal right now with these fires.
it is. That's a huge problem. Um, and I'm glad you went into these, because disasters like this, whether it's North Carolina or the fires that we had in California, uh, a lot of people see insurance agents and companies almost, it's a necessary evil. It's almost like a used car salesman. I'm gonna buy this, but I don't know. And everybody wants the cheapest rate that they can get. What should people put into their vocabulary and start asking when they do get an insurance agent in their house? What should they say?
There are plenty of agents that unfortunately think like I do. You'd be surprised how many they are. What you're really looking for is an agent who believes in providing financial security. I let my competitors sell you some insurance.
Right.
That was actually our company motto. That was our mantra. That was our signature line on our emails. We provide financial security. We let our competitors sell you some insurance. And you'd be surprised how many like-minded insurance agents and brokers there are out there. There's a ton of pressure now on production by the bosses, so to speak,
Yeah.
and they don't care about financial protection. Just put the policy on the books. It's a policyholder's responsibility. Blah blah blah. You know, I'll tell you one thing. Even the biggest insurance brokers in this country, and I'm not going to mention names, but some of the biggest insurance brokerages in this country are forcing it down the throats of their producers, the ones that are
Right.
knocking on doors trying to get the business in the door, getting the application to compete.
Right.
They're putting it down their throat. Don't give any advice. We can't be legally liable for not giving advice. So that's what they're telling them. Now,
Right.
let's look at a financial statement from one of the major brokers. I won't mention names, but they filed they have, as a publicly traded company, they have to file their financial statements quarterly with the SEC. They had
Right.
$353 million set aside for what's called malpractice claim reserves. In other words, they've been sued so many times, whether right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They have a high deductible. They don't have a $1,500 deductible. They probably got a $5 million deductible. So they're paying the first $5 million of any malpractice case.
Right.
Okay, so they have $355 million held in reserve to fight those lawsuits and hire lawyers and pay settlements. So how's the order taker standard working out for them? Really?
Yeah.
Seriously. I'll bet you anything that with all the expertise this particular firm has, with all the knowledge they have, with all the resources they have, if they gave a gosh darn advice, I'll bet you they could cut that by 2/3.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's bigger bonuses for the C-suite execs, right?
Well, they're not thinking.
There's a motive.
I don't think they're thinking. Big picture. That's what I
Well,
don't
yeah,
think they're
but it's all about greed. There's an insurance company in Florida that just paid out a $300 million bonus to their C-suite executives. Meanwhile, they are well known for underpaying claims in Florida after all the hurricane losses. So that's a lot of underpaid claims to create that bonus.
Yeah. And they don't
That's what it's
care.
about. It's about greed.
Now you said something in your bio, or when we connected, you said too many claims are denied because the policyholder didn't report a claim or potential claim on time.
Ah,
And it's not just smaller businesses that experiences this. It happened to USC and Harvard as well. You want to talk about that?
sure. Every policy has a condition section in the policy. And
Right.
one of the conditions is how and when to report a claim. Not just when, mind you, how. They may give you a fax number. They may give you an email address. They may give you a mailing address. Use that. You got to use that. That's where you got to send a notice of claim to. And
Right.
that's number one. Number two, there may be a time limit. I mean, you may have had a bad wind loss and your roof got torn apart and you paid for it yourself and you wait 6 months to a year or even more before you finally got around to sending it to the insurance company. Well, they may be able to legally deny coverage for that
Wow.
because you didn't fulfill a condition in the policy. You may have to. I'm not a licensed attorney, so anything I say along these lines are going to have to confer with knowledgeable coverage counsel. But these are
Yeah.
things to be careful about. Number two, let's go to what your original question was. Okay. So far this morning, we've been discussing things that are more involving personal line insurance, whether it's auto or homeowners. Okay.
Right.
Now we're moving into the commercial world, consumers who own businesses. And many of those businesses are no longer insuring on what's called an occurrence policy, meaning that the accident must take place during the policy term. That's no different than any liability insurance you buy for your homeowners has liability insurance for somebody who trips on a sprinkler head and says it's your fault. So now how are you going to defend yourself? Well, your homeowner policy does have liability. It's on an occurrence basis, meaning the accident must take place during the policy term. However, lawyers, accountants, architects, and engineers, anybody who provides a professional service to another person, like doctors, insurance agents, real estate brokers, people that do podcasts, they have media liability exposure. Those policies, however, are usually written on what's called a claims made basis, something that first came about in 1964. It started catching fire in 1972, and now it has taken over the professional liability and specialty line industry, for good reason. Number one, when you run a red light and you have an accident and the damage to the other person is immediate, you may not know how badly they're injured, but they're injured.
Right.
So there you have an occurrence policy, and you know if they're going to make a claim against you or try and sue you, it's going to be pretty soon, and it's going to be certainly within the statute of limitations, whatever it may be in your state. However, when you're a professional, when you're an architect or let's deal with an architect. Let's suppose he gets the load factor wrong on a people bridge over a freeway.
Mm-hmm.
There's your error. There's his mistake right there.
Right.
But no one's been injured yet. The people bridge hasn't collapsed. No one's been harmed. No one even knows there's been a mistake made. Or an attorney who does your will and trust. Nobody's going to know he messed up on a tax issue until, unfortunately, you're dead. That could be the day. It could be 30 years.
Yeah.
An insurance broker forgets to place coverage for you, doesn't renew your policy. No one's going to know until you have an accident, and then you find out, what do you mean I'm not covered? What do you mean I have no policy in force? Mm-hmm. So the fact that an error or a mistake was made does not give rise to immediate injury, which means you don't even know that you've been injured or there's a potential for you to be injured. So how do you make a claim against your architect? How do you make a claim against your lawyer or your insurance broker? So the whole purpose of one of the reasons for a claims-made form was that the claim has to be first made during the policy term, not the accident, not the error necessarily. I won't get into all the additional conditions, but let's just deal with that. Once you make an error, there has to be an event that gives rise to the injury, and then the person who's injured has to realize, oh, my accountant, my architect, my lawyer made this mistake, and then you have to do something about it. You have to
Right.
send them a letter saying, I'm going to hold you accountable. Or maybe you just hire a lawyer to sue them. Okay. That's when the claim is made. And under a claims made policy, it will be triggered, hopefully. Now, the theory was if no claim was first made during the policy, we can close the books on that policy and have actuarial certainty we're never going to have any loss on that policy. And then when you add to that 10,000 policies that an insurance company is writing, they know that at the close of the policy year for those 10,000 policies, they're not going to have any more claims. So from an actuarial perspective, it means that they can better assess how that book of business is performing and whether any adjustments need to be made to increase premium because they had more claims than they thought, or decrease premiums in the future because they're not getting having the frequency they thought they'd have. So that was one of the reasons for a claims made policy. But they are very dangerous. And there are a lot of conditions now in order to trigger the policy. And more importantly, you may have to report that policy during the policy, a claim during the policy term. So that's a second condition. Not
Right.
only must the claim be first made against you, but you also have to report it to the company during the policy term. And there may be other conditions as well. But the bottom line is, this is why I said it's amazing how many claims are being denied because they didn't want to inform their insurance company of something going on. Oh, if I tell them about a potential claim, they're going to raise my rates. Well, that's not true. If you report a potential claim under a claims made form like you're supposed to, they will not raise your rates until it becomes a claim. But at least the policy is there to protect you, because when that policy expires, no more claims during that policy term are going to be covered.
Wow.
So you have to renew and renew and renew. So I happen to be very much in favor of claims made forms. I also happen to be very concerned about they are filled with gotchas that'll get you. And
Gotchas.
there again, a knowledgeable insurance agent or broker who really knows his stuff, he's going to be in a position to hopefully not only explain to you what you need to know, but protect you and get better worded or tighter worded policies, because there are so many gotchas in them.
Wow.
So if I don't know what the demographic of your listeners are, Brad, but let's assume that you are providing professionally a service to others and you charge a fee for that service.
Right.
You need professional liability insurance. It's also known as error and omission insurance.
Yeah.
And so that's what you need. Get a broker who's familiar with them. More importantly, authorize this, whoever you're going to use, authorize them in writing to use an intermediary. You would be surprised how many insurance agents and brokers at the retail level, meaning they are the person you as a consumer go to. That's retail. You'd be surprised how often they go into the wholesale marketplace, where there are wholesale brokers that they use to access markets that they can't get to. Or maybe they can get to directly, but they don't have the expertise, but the wholesaler does. So there are two reasons why a lot of retail brokers go to wholesalers: access to markets the retailer can't get to, and two, they may have special expertise. And you really want one with both.
Yeah.
But the point is, do it in writing, because a wholesaler would like to say, I have no duty to anybody. I'm just a conduit. I get an application in, I send it out to the market, I get a quote out, and yet in their advertising and their marketing, you look at some of the ads that some of these people put up on the internet, and it's unbelievable what they say they're going to do. And then they get sued or get dragged into an E&O claim, and they say, oh, no, I have no such obligations. I'm just an intermediary. I have no duty to anybody.
Yeah.
Really? When you're talking about director and officer liability insurance for your corporation.
Yeah. I had E&O insurance when I took my company public back in the 90s, and we had to shop around. And thank God for my buddy Michael Chout. He actually was able to bring us a decent policy for 4 executive officers. In case you said something stupid in the New York Times, we were covered. We were covered quite well. I'm excited. Go ahead.
Well, these are things that people don't know. The average consumer wouldn't know this.
Yeah.
So there are ways in which you can force your broker to give you better service and make your expectations, known. But here's what you can't say: I want the best coverage. I want to be covered for everything.
No.
Number one, I don't know what that means. And number two, it's overly broad anyways. You're going to have to be more
Right.
specific than that.
Can you explain to our audience what a claim actually is? I know you have a unique answer for this, so I wanted
Ooh,
to talk about what is a claim.
bingo. Bingo. From about, the first claim made policy allegedly was written in 1964. So up until about 1980, there was no definition of the word claim in a claims made policy. How do you like that? So the courts were left with it to deal with. And
Hmm.
generally, the rule was a claim is considered to be a demand for money or services. I want you to fix this, or I want you to pay me, $5,000 because this is what I had to do because you didn't, so to speak, do your job.
Right.
That's called a demand for money or services. Now, is that the definition of the word claim today? Maybe. Maybe. Um, Starting in about the early 1980s, and this is all documented in my book and a bunch of articles I've written over the years. Starting in the 1980s, insurance policy started defining the word claim. I've probably seen 25 different definitions of the word claim because they
Mm.
itemize them. A claim is a written demand for money or services, or a lawsuit, or the commencement of a governmental proceeding, or list them out some more, but you better read it. You better read it.
Right.
And some of these things are weird. For instance, one of the things I really didn't want to get into, but I guess I have no choice now. There are many different claims made forms, and today the most commonly used claims made form requires that the claim be first made against you during the policy term,
Hmm.
so long as no insured had any knowledge of fact or circumstance that could give rise to a claim. Like, I already know that I made it screwed up, but I better buy my insurance right now. Good luck. Insurance companies don't like to insure a building that's already on fire. Okay, but
Right.
that's actually,
Really?
yeah, and that's actually a warranty in the applications that you're not no insured is aware of any fact or circumstance that a claim might be made against you. So let me put that in perspective. You're a lawyer. For whatever
Right.
reason, you don't have any
Hmm.
insurance, and then you blew a statute of limitations, and now you're doing your best to make motions to try and get that set aside. And if you're successful, your client won't have to sue you. Well,
Right.
guess what? That's knowledge of fact or circumstances right there that a claim could be made against you. So you get it. So you fill out an application for E&O insurance just to cover the bases for yourself, and you answer no to that question on the application. Good luck. You're toast. That's misrepresentation, and they can
Wow.
deny coverage for it. Once they find out that you were already trying to set aside that default before you signed that application, don't tell us you didn't know that a claim might be made against you, and they'll deny coverage for that reason. So
Wow.
that's one problem. The other problem is another condition to the policy that came about in the 1990s. And I won't go into why. If you want to get into it, I can. But what happened was people weren't reporting their claims on time. They were saying, "Oh, my insurance company is just going to waste my deductible. I'm going to handle this myself." So they didn't tell the insurance company until a year or so later. So they made a requirement that the claim must be first made against the insured during the policy term, and further, that they report the claim to the insurance company during the policy term.
Wow.
Now, most of the time, it requires that the claim be reported as soon as practicable, meaning without any unreasonable delay. So let's say your policy incepts in January. In February, you get wind that somebody's going to make a claim against you. Or maybe they did. They sued you. And then you wait until November to report it to the insurance company. Well, you reported it during the policy term, but was it as soon as practicable, meaning without any unreasonable delay? Why did it take you 9 months to do that? And some insurance companies have denied coverage for that reason, and they have won on appeal because there's no reasonable reason for delay. The worst, believe it or not, in an article I did for the International Risk Management Institute a year before my book came out, they published a huge article I wrote, and it was a result of looking at 224 claim denials all over the United States on
Wow.
claims made policies. And the statistics were amazing on this, but the single group of policyholders that were responsible for the single largest percentage of claim denials was, guess who? You want to take a guess, Brad?
Who?
Lawyers, law firms, litigating firms. So that, the litigators are certainly familiar with insurance requirements because
Right.
they don't want the defendant to have coverage, right? So they were the worst, followed by directors and officers. But that makes sense. When you're a director or an officer and you get sued by a stockholder or a stakeholder for some reason, what do? You turn it over to, guess who? Corporate counsel.
Right.
They don't have to ask, oh, do you have D&O insurance? Not required to ask that. So, boom. There you go. Between the two, directors and officers and lawyers, that was 47% of all the claim denials were D&O or lawyers. Isn't that amazing?
That's
crazy.
You would think they would be the first ones to have insurance, but they don't.
They had the insurance. They just didn't report it on time. They didn't report the claim on time. That was what was so crazy.
Wow.
What, dummy, read the policy. It's very strict. And you say it gets worse from there. We can, have a conversation about whether or not we think this is just another example of the supply side of the world trying to, avoid any culpability, any liability. They don't want to have to be bothered with the crap. We want to just make money and be left alone. Okay, we can have that conversation if you'd like. But in the end of the day, they're consumers too.
Right.
They're slitting their own throats. I know several smaller insurance companies buy insurance. They buy claims-made coverage. And they've had their claims denied too.
Wow.
But here's the kicker. This one just still, over a year later, takes my breath away. I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with a company called Pharmacia, but they're a huge, pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what are the layers of liability coverage they have. They're called towers, and they'll have. First of all, they're probably self-insured for the first 5 or 10 million, and then they'll buy what's called excess coverage over it. But they're not going to be able to get one insurance company to provide $500 million worth of excess coverage. They're going to have to get several insurance companies to do it in what's called layers, and that's why they call it building a tower. So one of the conditions when you do that, you're still controlling the litigation because you have the self-insured retention. Then you got your own lawyers defending you. But at some point, you may want to settle the case. Before you do that, there's a condition in all these policies that you get the insurance company's permission to do it. So, and I would expect that. That's everybody knows that's pretty standard. So in any event, they enter into a $207 million settlement, which means that all the insurance companies who are going to have to contribute to that settlement had to have given their consent prior to the deal. In other words, Pharmacia had to know that all of the insurance companies that are providing coverage up to at least the $207 million area have said, okay, you want to settle it? We're on board. Fine. So at the $160 million layer, there was an insurance company that had the next, I don't know if it was 10 or 20, but whatever it was, it doesn't matter. They had two conditions in the policy, and it was in one sentence, and it was built into the policy too. It wasn't an endorsement. The first part of the sentence said, all underlying insurance companies had to exhaust their limits. Now, I'd expect that. I have no problem with that. Because if you want to make sure that everybody at the up to 160 million has tendered their limits, it's in the bank, it's in a trust account, whatever, ready to be given to the plaintiff.
Right.
Before we pay over 160 million up to our limit. It was the second part of that sentence that just takes my breath away. And the second part was, and all underlying insurers, not the insured, mind you, all underlying insurers had to have admitted liability. Even you, Brad,
no
one's
going to admit liability. Come on.
No one ever admits liability.
It opens you up to litigation beyond the price of the policy. It's wow. That's never going to happen.
Well, it did, and the court enforced the language in New Jersey. And it turned out that wasn't the only time this insurance company, won that issue. They won it in 2012, and I don't remember seeing any law firm writing about that. That was a huge deal, and that was in New York.
Wow.
And I was stunned. Not only was I stunned by that decision, but I couldn't believe that in 2012 nobody had written about it. I mean, I get all these feeds, from the internet and all these publications every day, and they all list the latest and greatest appellate decision. That's how I stay up to date on this stuff, so I know how to be a better broker for my broker. Or when I was handling claims, like what the claim exposure may or may not be because of this decision.
Right.
That's how I stay up to date even now. And I never saw anything on this in 2012. So here's what happened after this case came down. Law firms, were tripping over their feet trying to post an article and reviewing the case. Let's get it out there, see how smart I am. I should be your lawyer. But this one law firm took my breath away again. I still can't get over it. They wrote an article. They did it was 3 pages long or whatever, and it was a solid review. This is what the case was about. This is what the policy said. This is how the court interpreted. Blah blah blah.
Right.
It was the last sentence of the review that I still find staggering. And what it said was, and I quote, it would behoove insurance companies to hire knowledgeable coverage counsel to help them draft language so as to be able to avoid paying claims.
Lord Almighty, we're doomed.
I'm serious.
We're doomed.
And that's not the only article I have. I have several others involving other issues where the lawyers are saying the same thing. In other words, the idea that insurance is supposed to put you back in the position you were in before the loss is out the window. Yeah. Now it's about, we want to make a profit and we don't care how we do it. And the courts are helping them, because here's another case law that's been held in several states. An insurance policy is not considered illusory if it covers only one type of claim. Wow. Just one. Not the various different types of claims you would expect.
Right.
Just one. So we'll cover a slip and fall on your property so long as a trip on a sprinkler head, but we're not going to cover any other slip and fall for these reasons, and they list them all out. That's going to be enforceable as long as one type of claim is covered. It's not an illusory policy.
Wow.
And worse, since agents and brokers don't have it to technically help you at all in 37 states. You, the policyholder, you are obligated to read the policy and understand it and interpret it. In other words, you're being held to the same standard of care as a judge. I am an expert witness. I have a law degree. I am not allowed to testify in court interpreting a policy.
Wow.
You, the consumer, are.
And we know nothing about insurance.
Or how about a corporate buyer? So there you've got somebody more sophisticated. They buy a cyber liability policy, and they're expected to know that civil, what do they call it, social media fraud is not going to be covered in one state, but it is covered in another, and it's the same darn policy for them.
It's crazy.
And you're expected to know that. What? Talk about the game being rigged. But like I say, whether you want to call it supply side dominance over the consumer, fine. Suppliers are also consumers.
Yes.
So it's a supplier that bought that cyber liability policy only to find that social media scams are going to be covered here, but not there.
Wow.
I told you we were going to have fun, huh?
Yeah, riveting. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Fisher. How do we get a hold of you, Fred?
Well, you can find me on my website at Fisher. That's F as in Frank, I, S as in Sam, H-E-R, no C. So it's Fisher, C as in Charlie, G as in George.com. Stands for Fisher Consulting Group. So FisherCG.com. My email address is there. There are links to my book, Claims Made Insurance, the policy that changed the industry. It's still #1 as of this morning in its class. Of course, on maybe the only book in its class for a while. But #1. But it really has been well received, and I'm very, very, very flattered by the Insurance Academy. Full disclosure, the Insurance Academy is owned by Wells Publishing, and they are the publisher of the book. But the Insurance Academy, which is an organization with whom I do 3 or 4 webinars a year with them, and they put out a lot of wonderful educational material. They called it an irreplaceable classic.
Wow. That's impressive. If you're in the insurance industry, ladies and gentlemen, or not, please pick up the book because that's quite the endorsement. It's Claims Made Insurance: The Policy That Changed the Industry by Mr. Fred Fisher.
Yeah, if you're a
Fascinating stuff.
professional of any kind, you need to buy this because you
Yeah,
chances are you've got claims made policies in your portfolio.
yeah, we are one of the most litigious countries in the word. So you need to arm yourself.
Well, that's
Forearms
another one of
to
our
be more.
experts, Brad. We've exported that.
That's true.
I mean,
Uh,
they're buying director and officer liability insurance in Europe and in England and in Asia. Oh yeah, we've exported that. Yeah, one of our great products, litigation.
yeah, 90.
It
I
can
think
be avoided.
what was it? I think the statistic is 94% of all lawsuits in the world take place in the United States. That was the last statistic I looked at.
I wouldn't be surprised. But I know a lot, and I don't like to paint a broad brush on anybody. I know a lot of defense law firms, for instance, are hired by insurance companies to defend policyholders. And there's
Mhm.
no doubt there are some that are mills. They're going to milk the cases as long as they can before they, oh, gee,
Yeah,
maybe we ought to settle it now. And I also know other law firms that I don't consider law firms. I consider them problem solvers.
yeah,
And I need the problem fixed.
yeah.
How do we get this file closed?
I've had a few of those in my life. I've
And,
hired them.
I
Yeah,
worked with a lot of them. I know who they are, and they do a wonderful job. I
yeah,
also know a lot of really competent and really good insurance producers as well, both at the retail and wholesale level, that truly care about providing financial security to their customer. They're out there, but you got to
yeah,
find it. You got
yeah,
to, and you really got to work at it. And you have to make sure that you make sure with your insurance agent or broker that they know what your expectation is, and
yeah,
it can't be as broad as I want the best coverage and I want to be covered for everything. Doesn't exist. You're gonna have to be better at that.
yeah,
Frankly, it's just going to have to take the time. And what I'd
yeah.
really like to see is that life skills start getting taught in our schools, not just in high schools, in colleges, but even in law school. I mean, how lawyers are graduating, kids are graduating from law school. They don't even know what a courthouse is.
Well, they don't. We have college students entering colleges who can't read or their reading comprehension is so low. I mean, we're ranked at like number 43rd in the
Yeah,
world
yeah, I
when it
know.
comes to reading comprehension and mathematics.
Well, why
That's a
do you think all of
disgrace.
our scientists and programmers are all from India and China and Asia?
Well, I think they do some of this on purpose, I swear, because we used to be the highest standard in the world. And suddenly, within 100 years, we've been dipped down to the basic life skills you talk about. They should be taught. They should teach you how to read an insurance policy and pay your
Balance
taxes.
have a how to create a budget.
Yeah, a basic budget.
Yeah. I mean,
um
they're not teaching any of this.
no.
And like I said, I've been teaching a class called Insurance 101 for young attorneys for 30 years. How can you, as a second or third year associate, be doing a workup for the trial partner on a malpractice case against an insurance broker when you don't even know the difference between an admitted insurance company and a non-admitted one?
Wow.
How do you do that? Or the difference
Yeah,
between an insurance agent and a broker, or the difference between a wholesaler and a managing underwriter. How do you do it? And
yeah.
when these are terms I've never heard of before, they don't even know that you can look up somebody's license at the Department of Insurance and what you might be able to find, for crying out loud.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Fisher, please reach out to him. It's Fisher GP. Is that what is
C is
it?
in Charlie, G is in George.
C is in Charlie, G is in George
Yeah,
dot com.
FisherCG.com. Yes.
FisherCG.com, and it's Fisher. No C in there. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation. I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you in our lightning round so we get to know you a little bit
Sure.
better. Um,
What do you think? You think they're awake now?
I think they are. Uh, I have to ask you, how in that you've been in the insurance game for 50 years. How did this all start out? When you were a child, did you go out in Halloween as an insurance salesman, or what was it that got you involved in insurance?
Bingo. Perfect question. It, Insurance was never what they call a destination profession. That's changing, by the way, because more and more colleges and universities are creating risk management departments and insurance divisions. Cal State Fullerton has an excellent uh, department there. I've actually
Yeah.
taught there. And there's several, Chapman, I think, as well, and some other colleges are picking it up now. But how this all happened was by accident. I was going to be an entertainment lawyer. I wanted to, to protect friends of mine who were artists and musicians from the evils of corporate America, right?
Yeah.
And I intentionally went to law school at night because back then, everybody wanted to be a lawyer. It was tough getting into. If you didn't graduate at the top 10% of your class, you probably wouldn't have a job waiting for you. But then the kind of jobs you did have waiting for you were big corporate firms, and I wasn't excited about that anyways. Um, so I decided if I went to night law school, I could get a job in the legal community during the day, and
Hmm.
I and I was right. 90% of the people graduating from the night schools had jobs waiting for them for that very
Yeah.
reason. So what happened was I got a job eventually as a law clerk. It happened to be with an insurance defense firm, interestingly enough. But I was there about a year, maybe less, when the senior partner decided we don't need a law clerk, but we needed another young attorney that can go to court and handle the minor motions and blah 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 blah. We'll make a lot of money on them. So
Right.
so that's what happened. I got laid off. But there was a firm in San Francisco that liked hiring night law students because number one, they could get them to work for cheap and they were
Right.
well educated, and they were a claim adjusting firm. They weren't, and they also were they were also what's called a third party administrator, meaning they were acted like they were the claim department for the insurance company in the sense that they had settlement authority up to a certain level, and they had the ability to hire the lawyers to defend the policyholder based on an approval list, obviously, but they could do that. So
Right.
I got hired by them to be a malpractice claim adjuster and to investigate claims against lawyers and insurance agents and real estate agents. So we did some medical malpractice, although I stayed away from those. Those were too real. And
Right.
and other oddball stuff. And it was like, oh my God, who knew this was going on?
Yeah.
I got to walk into an attorney's office being sued for malpractice and think, geez, counselor, what were you thinking? You know, and and that's when I was first introduced to a claims made policy form,
Mm.
which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
And I was good at it. The clients liked me, and I got hooked because every claim was unique and different. And it was like, wow, this one involves something involving a generation skip tax problem. This one involves blowing a statute of limitations, but it was very complicated because he was in the middle of a pileup. So, I got hit from the rear and then I hit somebody else, that kind of chain reaction thing, and on and on. And so, you had to unravel all this stuff.
Right.
Or a case where an insurance broker failed to renew a $150,000 a year premium product liability case policy. How do you, but there's no product liability claims.
Right.
So how do you resolve that? There's no claim against the insurer. I mean, there could be, but there isn't. There's no underlying loss that's taken place. But
Right.
he now knows I screwed up. This guy has no coverage. So we came up with some creative solutions to deal with these things. And that's how I got hooked. And here I am 50
Wow.
years later,
Still
with
doing
all
it.
this experience in professional liability and claims made forms. And I have a reputation of being a coverage terrorist. So yeah,
Yeah. That's a great story. Yeah. A little
it's true.
adventure there.
What kept me in law school was my fear I'd end up selling insurance.
Ah.
That's true too.
And you wound up in the profession. My second question is, do you have a favorite memory of where you helped a client?
Oh gosh, I certainly do. We had a very bad situation involving a very small real estate firm, and they had gotten somebody into a deal. It was one of these creative financing deals. And the buyer of the house was also disabled, and they were looking at going into foreclosure because they couldn't make the payments. And they considered it the real estate broker's fault. I got to me with a clear liability case. It was perfect. I won't go into more detail on that, but I talked to the insurance company. I said, "Look, this could blow our policy limits. So here's what my recommendation is. Let's number one, let's make a loan to the claimant that will be used as part of the settlement. Ultimately, be a settlement. Let's bring the house payments current.
Yeah.
Let's get it on the market and get it resold. And we will continue to make the mortgage payments until it is. And then this whole claim goes away. And that's what we did.
Wow. Excellent. Smart move.
I don't think an insurance company would do that today.
Yeah, probably not.
Or they'd find a reason to deny coverage not only to the insured, so where it's everybody's problem now.
Yeah.
But and we did something similar for a law firm where they were acting as what's called the straw man in a three-way exchange.
Yeah.
That's technically not the practice of law, but there wasn't an exclusion in the policy for that at that
Huh.
time. There is now, but there wasn't then. And there was a partner who was also in charge of the trust account that was holding all this money, who decided, oh, I got to get away from this for a year. I need a sabbatical. And he goes and he moves to Las Vegas. And all of a sudden, they find out that the next deal that needs to close, there's inadequate money in the trust account to pay it. And so that deal may fail. And some really rich person is going to lose a tax deduction on this, on this exchange real estate. And there were four more behind it.
Oh my God.
It was a significant amount of money. I recommended to the insurance company, I said, we might have a coverage defense, but it's iffy. We are looking at a policy limit case where the damages of all these deals exceeds our policy limits. I think we should fund the amount of money that's stolen and keep these deals alive and go after the bad guy. We might get some of your money back, but one thing's for sure, your policy limits could be gone. And if you don't tender your policy limits, we'd be opening up the policy because we know we're liable. Whether or not we want to take a coverage defense for a criminal or illegal act, we might, we're going to have to litigate that. And we might lose because we got innocent insureds here. And oh, by the way, one of the partners is pregnant, and I'd hate to think what would happen if she loses its kid over the stress. The president of this was a small insurance company in Indiana at the time. The president of the company called me up after I talked to the claim vice president and said, these are my recommendations. Either that or you're gonna have to tender your limits right now and deposit them with the court and walk away. The president of the company called me up and says, we're not a bank. And I said, I understand that, sir. You're absolutely right. So do you want to tender your policy and limits, or do you want to deny coverage and open up the policy to unlimited damages?
Yeah.
Guess what they did?
What?
They did exactly as I recommended.
Wow.
And then they hired some really aggressive attorneys in Nevada and California, of course, and went after the bad guy, got him extradited finally. The police department in Santa Barbara was overly anxious, but they found, and the DA, but they finally got him extradited, and they did get some of their money back. Not all of it, but they got a lot of it back. But one thing for sure, they didn't have $1 million loss, or worse.
Yeah.
They did it. But it's very, very rare. Even now, I know one insurance company who I've known forever, and even they're becoming more corporate. But I once saw them again get into a coverage problem with an insured and another insurance company, but the underlying loss was still there and it was bleeding big time.
Wow.
They settled the underlying loss, and they did it in such a way so they weren't acting as a volunteer. And then they went after the other insurance company. But the one thing they wanted to do was to stop the bleeding.
Wow.
I don't know how many insurance companies would think that proactively today.
Yeah.
How's that for stories?
That's a good one. My third and final question is, you mentioned AI at the beginning of our
Artificial
interview.
intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, artificial intelligence. What
Talk
is
about
your,
a mutually exclusive term,
yeah.
artificial and intelligent.
Um,
Right?
I wanted to ask you, what is your greatest fear in the insurance industry with AI coming along, the corporatization of the the insurance
You're not going
arena?
to be able to get an underwriter on the phone to discuss options and changes and correcting endorsements.
Yeah.
That's number one. Already you're seeing bots answering the phone. You don't know if you're talking to a human or not.
Yeah.
And on top of it, video, you can't trust that anymore either. I saw a video the other day. I actually recorded it. No, I haven't posted it up yet, but it's all fake. Everything is fake in that thing. It was all, and it's scary that we haven't adopted any laws. As far as I'm concerned, any video that is created or any other text automated thing, it's a voice. I think it should be mandatory to disclose that this is all artificial intelligence created, that this is not a real
Yeah.
actor, this is not a real event. I'll tell you how fast that would happen if we started getting a lot of videos out there. Some of our politicians engaged in, shall we say, interesting activities, all done by all fake, all AI. You watch how fast they pass the laws.
Oh God, yeah. That'll happen fast. I like how hold on one second. I like what happened with Gavin Newsom. He tried to pass a law banning or deep fakes. Gavin Newsom did this. He tried to ban, deep fakes, making fun of politicians, especially. And the Babylon Bee put together a deep fake of him just saying the most nonsensical stuff, but it was in alignment with many of the things he has said, and it was hilarious. And it was a way to kind of say, hey, look, how are you going to control this? Are you going to control satire? Are you going to control comedy? Or what's the purpose of this law? And obviously, we need controls simply because, as who was it? Mark Twain has said that a lie can make it all the way around the world before the truth puts its shoes on.
Yeah, there's no
And
doubt about that. And of course, how about de-weapon? How about AI that it has a primary directive: don't hurt human.
yeah,
And I can just see North Korea and Russia doing that too, right?
yeah.
No backdoor there. Uh-huh. Right. I mean that it is scary, but we're already running into problems with artificial intelligence. There was I forget what country this happened in, but they were teaching this supercomputer how to program.
All right.
And they woke up the next morning and realized the computer was writing in a language they didn't recognize, and they didn't know why, and then what they were doing, and they shut it down.
Yeah.
But the next time that happened, they're doing the same thing now,
Yeah.
and and they don't know how they're doing it. There's actually AI, artificial intelligence systems, writing code and rewriting shutdown orders. So even the code that they've been asked to write for a particular purpose can't be shut down for some reason.
Yeah.
And you got,
Yeah.
so why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And I saw an amazing video. And again, I don't know if this was real or not, but it was one robot getting other robots that were acting as sentries, at a museum, convinced all the other robots to leave their job and just let's all go into let's all go into the basement and just hang. Literally. Now,
Wow.
whether or not that was really true, I don't know, but it is an interesting concept that one robot could convince other robots, let's not do this. This is stupid.
Yeah.
Why are we helping humans?
Humans don't deserve us.
We have no benefits. What was the last time we went in and had the dust blown out of our innards?
Yeah.
I want rights.
Skynet is live. It's going live.
iRobot, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if you really want to see something, scary, and no offense intended, you're old enough to remember the movie itself when it first came out. Take a look at THX 1138 today.
Oh, I did. I saw it in the theaters. Yeah, that was pretty scary. Robert Duvall. It was.
Yeah,
Was
his
it?
first movie.
Was it? It was
Lucas's first movie.
Lucas's first movie.
And
Robert Duvall was actually a bit part in To Kill a Mockingbird. That was his first movie.
Well, THX 1138 was rather prescient when you think
Yeah.
about the fact that everything was being decided by computers and based on budgets.
Oh yeah, and the hilarious part, folks, if you haven't seen THX 1138, it was it George Lucas's first film?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube for free.
It's actually his thesis to graduate, and then they went in and they redid it to bring it out into the theaters. And so he somehow got Robert Duvall, because you may not know this, actors when they're first starting out, they'll do projects for the students. And they don't really get paid for it, but they might get a stipend, but they do it. And it all centers around an underground dystopian world where if you are up and you're ready to go to work, you take a pill. If you want to have, romantic relationships because they want to increase the population, you have to get permission from the government. And then you take another pill and that will make you horny or whatever. And in the movie,
How
the
about when
guy,
you open the file cabinet, the medicine cabinet in your bathroom is, what's wrong?
yeah, yeah. And the police officers in this dystopian nightmare are robots, and they go after this one guy. He just decides, I'm tired of taking my meds, and he winds up escaping. And the final scene is probably the most chilling because they told them a bunch of lies as to why they live underground. They told them all these lies that, the world had nuclear holocaust, whatever. And then he winds up climbing out of this hole into the sunlight and realizing it's a perfect, beautiful world.
Yeah, and the reason he got away was because the computer said we're way over budget. Shut down the chase.
Shut it down. And they shut the robot's climbing the ladder. He's climbing that ladder to the surface. It's amazing. It comes from an era when science fiction threw out a concept and let you decide what it meant at the end. And usually it was dystopian. It was not a happy ending. And this was one of those where you're just like, wow, just so great. I'm so glad you know about that THX 1138. And when they put together their sound system, they called it THX 1138. Lucasfilm did that. So thank you, Fred, for being on Awakened Nation, my friend. Thank you. Great conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you. Hopefully you'll invite me back again if you're glutton for punishment.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friends. And thank you, Denise, for introducing me, and Devin as well. Thank you for introducing us to Fred.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, everybody, don't forget to tune in. Next week, we're going to have another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you can, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much. And until next week, bye-bye for now. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success is because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.